afternoon, I'm Reid.
And I'm Louisa Cheatley. Coming up, women's football clubs more popular than ever, but struggling to keep their heads above water.
But first, students will be feeling the pinch under the government's new federal budget. With fees set to increase and help repayments to kick in earlier, studying might not be so popular. Cass Grimes reports.
Lockie, Vermont is one of thousands of students who wants to go to university. But the Turnbull government's plan to slash $2.8 billion from higher education funding means he might not be able to afford it.
To get a job these days, you do need a degree and a certificate of something, and the price went up and less people will be able to afford it, and it just makes it all a lot harder.
Students can expect to contribute anything between $2,000 and $3,500 more for a 4-year course. University of Melbourne's Student Union President, Yan Zhuang, is appalled by what she sees as a targeting of students already doing it tough.
We think it's quite disgraceful that the government is cutting funding for universities and for students while giving big businesses a tax break.
They'll also be repaying their debt much sooner than their predecessors, with the help repayment threshold falling to $42,000 per year. While these fee increases are less significant than previous changes, combined with the lowered threshold for help repayments, they may prove a deterrent to study, or make undertaking a degree prohibitive for prospective students. Tom Bentley from the Policy and Impact team at RMIT says the changes are unwelcome but not enormous, and that the university will work with students to minimise their impact.
In the context of everything that RMIT provides and the size of higher education in Australia, so far these changes are not huge.
The government also insists these changes are fair. Over a 4-year period, a university degree will be about $17 more expensive per week, which it says is reasonable. But students are still concerned.
I'm very worried about what this budget means for students and the quality of their education.
The University of Melbourne's Student Union is sending postcards to Parliament, hoping to persuade crossbenchers to block the government's proposals. If they're unsuccessful, students will have no choice but to pay up, if they still want to study. Cass Grimes, The City Journal.
The government has announced that first homeowners looking in regional Victoria will be rewarded for their investments, with grants rising from $10,000 to $20,000. Julia Hoffner reports on the proposed change and what the implications will be for potential buyers and real estate in Bendigo.
As of July 1st, the government will introduce an increase in the first homeowners grant for regional Victoria. In rural towns like Bendigo, this will prove incentive for young people to make the move and invest in regional property. Voted Bendigo's #1 real estate agent, Andrew Pearce says the current buyer demographic is demonstrating this trend.
The demographics for probably the younger ones is about 15-17% of our purchases are actually from the younger generation. They're looking for probably a property that's probably very affordable, because they can still buy a property here compared to the other, probably Melbourne and the other cities where they actually pay a lot more of their wage.
Currently living in Melbourne, 23-year-old Hannah Grimm is looking to buy her first home in Bendigo with her long-term boyfriend, with a budget of $350,000.
About 6 months I've been actively looking for a house, but of course it's every person's dream to one day be a homeowner. Well, the grant going from $10,000 to $20,000 has made a really big difference and means that I'm able to buy a house now rather than in a few months' time.
Hannah is currently living with her parents in order to save, and will look for a job in Bendigo as a teacher as soon as she purchases a home.
If not, I might have to look at commuting elsewhere, maybe for the first year or something, but ideally I'll end up getting a job as a teacher in one of the schools in Bendigo.
Prices in Melbourne has skyrocketed to an all-time high. More and more young people are opting to buy their first home in regional towns such as Bendigo, where they are no doubt getting more bang for their buck.
We've got first home buyers at the moment probably holding off a little bit and buying, because why would they buy now if in 6 weeks' time they can actually get a nice grant? I'm just finding that from the 1st of July, I believe, we'll be fairly busy.
Yes, within the price range, I think.
For people like Hannah, the grant means that their dreams of owning a first home could be in closer reach than they first thought. Julia Hoffner, RMIT.
The success of the AFLW has seen more women than ever pull the boots on for the 2017 season. But as Tim Miller reports, the increase in popularity means local women's football clubs need to work harder than ever as the AFL looks to make the lower levels more professional.
With 8 teams spread over junior and senior levels, Diamond Creek is one of the most powerful women's football clubs in Victoria. But for years, the club needed to fight hard just to get by.
So it was probably less resourced than the males community club.
More than 30 new players have signed up for the 2017 season, and with sponsors also jumping on board, the Creekers are kicking goals both on and off the field. But with the AFL looking to make the Victorian Women's Football League more professional to speed up the improvement of the women's game, the club will need every cent they can get to cope with the dramatic facelift.
We will have to meet the resourcing of a males AFL club within the next 2 or 3 years. So a ground like this wouldn't be suitable, and the type of resourcing around our strength and conditioning and our support program will have to increase.
But Diamond Creek's financial strength is a rarity among women's football clubs. The Darebin Falcons have won the last 4 VWFL premierships, but were forced to turn to crowdfunding to raise nearly $9,000 to buy new footballs. And with sponsors still hard to come by, it's money the club simply doesn't have.
We didn't have the amount of money there to go and be able to afford the number of footies that we needed to support all of the teams.
For clubs like the Falcons still battling with limited resources, the plan to increase the professionalism of the competition has left them facing an uncertain future. VFLW clubs risk losing their licences if they can't meet the AFL's demands, and with more teams from the national competition looking to expand into the VWFL, competition for resources is getting tougher than ever. And according to broadcaster Peter Holden, the only way forward is to merge with the bigger clubs coming in.
When even without player payments, they're just up against the resources alone of AFLW clubs. It's sooner rather than later they're told to, at least their top level side, to merge or to disappear back to community football.
Tim Miller, RMIT News.
As a rising population is beginning to use more and more public transport, one of Melbourne's biggest train stations is struggling to keep up. Francesca Reid reports on the much-needed upgrade plans for South Yarra Station.
The Victorian State Government has recently announced a $2 million business case plan within the 2017 to 2018 state budget to help develop an investigation into the refurbishment of the South Yarra Station. This state investment is coming independently of the federal government after failing to secure the funds from Canberra. The Honourable Sam Hibbins, Greens MP for Paran, has welcomed the funds.
It's a good start. I mean, the station needs some serious investment. Obviously, it's one of Melbourne's most neglected stations.
Hibbins has been campaigning strongly for these upgrades and has run an extensive Upgrade South Yarra Station campaign with a petition that garnered over 1,300 signatures and a survey with over 970 respondents. In the latest available data from PTV Research and Statistics, it was shown that South Yarra Station has experienced the fastest and greatest growth of passengers boarding annually compared to any other station. This combined with a rapid population growth, 33% in 5 years according to the Australian Bureau of Statistics, and more people choosing to use public transport, with trains seeing the largest growth.
Population growth rampant, more and more people using trains. It's a station that has not had any serious investment for decades.
The state-funded initiative has been welcomed as the first step in the right direction from the South Yarra community, especially after considerable back and forth over whether to include the station on the Melbourne Metro Rail interchange.
When you always line up to go into the station, there's always so many people and then they always kind of flood onto the street, so it can be a bit dangerous if there's cars going past. So I think a better entrance would probably be beneficial.
State Minister for Public Transport Jacinta Allen was unavailable for comment, but has previously stated that this business case will be helped to investigate what the station needs and how to improve things.
I think there's been a lot of debate about whether it should be in the metro, and I think while it is important to do that in the future, I think at the moment we really need to focus on the upgrades.
This has been Francesca Reid with RMIT News.
A young Melbourne boy and his family were told 3 years ago that a rare genetic condition would rob him of his hearing and vision before his teens. Now, Melbourne doctors believe they are on the right track to finding a cure. Bonnie Barkmeyer has the report.
7-year-old Lewis Shepherd was born profoundly deaf and will soon go blind. Lewis was born with Usher Syndrome, a condition that affects just 1 in 100,000 children.
Usher Syndrome is a rare genetic condition that causes profound deafness, gradual vision loss and vestibular dysfunction.
There are 3 main types of Usher Syndrome, and each of the types has a number of different genes responsible for causing the condition. Lewis has type 1B and really feels the effects of his vestibular dysfunctions.
Balance is a bit of a challenge for you sometimes. You fall over a bit, yeah, but you always bounce back up. Yeah.
The gradual vision loss in Usher Syndrome occurs due to an eye disease called retinitis pigmentosa.
Field of vision now is probably about 30 degrees, so I'm looking at a bit of a tunnel like that. that fair, Lewis?
And about until year.
Yeah.
The vision problems are initially characterised by night blindness and tunnel vision.
And what are some of the things we do to make you feel better when you can't see?
Hold my hand.
Because the condition is so rare, Lewis's doctors had barely come across Usher syndrome before treating him. With new technologies involving gene editing and therapies, doctors are working towards a cure for the retinitis pigmentosa part of Usher syndrome and other conditions that cause blindness.
One avenue is through gene-based therapy, where you insert good copies of the gene directly into the eye. And the other work that we've been doing here at CERA is genetic editing, or scientifically known as CRISPR, which goes in and edit and fix the gene in the cells.
In the meantime, Emily has co-founded a charity called Usher Kids Australia to raise awareness and much-needed funds for the syndrome.
Aim was to bring together families of children with Usher syndrome across Australia.
Certainly the work that Emily's done with one of her colleagues in Usher Kids Australia has raised the awareness for early diagnosis.
And for now, Lewis and his family are working hard every day to ensure he lives the most normal life a 7-year-old boy can. Bonnie Barkmeyer, RMIT News.
That's it for this episode of RMIT City Journal News. Go to our website at cityjournal.net for more news, or join us on Facebook by searching City Journal RMIT. I'm Frankie Reid.
And I'm Louisa Cheatley. Thanks for joining us. See you next time.